evening and welcome. This is Class 6 and we're going to continue covering Chapter 5 actually because we only covered half of it last week. I'm Carrie Rattle of Behavioral Sense. I'm proud to be a women's money mentor, and as always we have Greater Austin TV at the back of the room. They will cover the first part of the lesson, and then of course Catherine behind the camera gets to go home and we can talk about anything personal we want to. I'd like to thank Catherine and thank Greater Austin TV because this is the last time they're actually going to be shooting us. The rest of the lessons we're going to continue on our own. So it gives everybody a few lessons out there for free on how to manage your finances. And if you want to learn how to manage your debt, pay down your debt, then we invite you to join Women's Money and the course, because that will be our next session, and you can learn in person. So I thank you, Greater Austin TV. Okay, last week, I think you guys had a bit of fun. It was kind of interesting, right? Yeah. So we had Serge Bevel, who talked about credit score in greater depth than I probably ever could. He sees so many different ways that credit reports and credit scores can be affected. So basically though, in quick summary for everybody, your credit score is your trustworthiness. And your trustworthiness is, can a lender trust you to pay back a loan when you take out the money? So if you take a loan against a car, you're driving the car off the lot, the dealer wants to know that you're going to continue paying every month, or they have to hunt you down and retrieve your car. And we also talked about how much credit scores can affect what you pay. We had an example last week where car loan interest rates varied from 3 3/4% to 18%, depending on your credit score. So if your credit score was good, you'd be getting 3 3/4% to buy that car off the lot. And if your credit score was really bad, but unfortunately you needed a car, you would be paying 18% on that loan, which is significant. So it also affects your other insurance coverage. Your credit score is used for so many things today. It's not only trustworthiness, but it's, are you a responsible person overall? And so we talked about sort of what an excellent score is and things you can do to improve it. Are there any questions about what we covered? Any other thoughts about that? You guys are good? Cool. Oh yes, and the latest hint I got from Serge. So you might want to pull out your wallet and take a look. Serge was saying that if you have more retail cards, so more than 1 or 2 retail cards, and retail, so where you shop, like Macy's, Lord & Taylor, Costco, that type of thing, versus bank cards, right, from Chase or Citi. If you have a lot of retail cards, you are more likely a compulsive shopper than the average person. Yeah. So they kind of notice that when they look at your credit reports and which credit cards you have. So it's kind of interesting. So it's a fun little tip and, you know, cocktail discussion, right? Pull out your wallet. Hey, what kind of credit cards do you have? Although I'm not sure too many people would want to know that they're compulsive. So let's talk about credit score and protecting your credit score. Because, and it's not frequent, but you can get wrong things on your credit score. So there's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It protects you. It says that you are entitled to an absolutely accurate credit report. And if there is something that you deem to be not accurate on there, you have the right to contact them, explain in written form why you think it isn't accurate and provide any proof you can. And it's up to them to A, investigate it, B, get back to you in 30 days, and C, give you a written report. So if they find out it is accurate, they actually have to tell you in writing why it's accurate. So it could be something that you didn't understand. It could be an account you don't recognize because you got a car loan and it was from your dealership, but it's called something like GE Enterprise and you don't recognize it and you made your car loans late. So it's up to them to get back to you and explain in writing that indeed it is accurate. But you always have the right to dispute, and it's really important. When we were talking last week, we talked about where you can get your credit report. So the most reliable is annualcreditreport.com, which we talked about last week. Serge and I have differing opinions on how you should get your credit reports. Serge would say to you, get all three at the same time, because then you can compare to see if there's an inaccuracy on one. So you've got Equifax, you've got Experian, and you've got TransUnion. So I said it's always good to sort of compare and make sure all the scores are about the same, because if one score is significantly different, wow, okay, what's on there? What I like to coach clients to do, if you're not too afraid about having a problem and you just sort of want to keep an ongoing check on your credit score, because you are entitled to one free credit report per year from each of those companies, if you get one every 4 months, you can keep track of the fact that your credit score on at least one of them seems to be looking normal, and it allows you to keep track of it. So it's up to you. I can certainly understand why, if you're first starting out and you've never looked at your credit score before, you might want to get all three just to compare them. But if you track your credit score pretty regularly, and frankly, a lot of credit card companies now allow you to get your credit report through them, so you can just pop in and get it anytime, right? If you're pretty well keeping track of things and nothing looks unusual, I would just get one every 4 months. So TransUnion, 4 months from now, 4 months after that, get Experian, and 4 months after that, get Equifax. So you got each one for free sometime in the year, and then keep on going. Totally up to you, but they are the most reliable credit reports you can get out there. Okay, so inaccuracy. There are different types of inaccuracies, and I'm going to cover the basics. One might be somebody has a very similar name to you, and one of their accounts, one of their debts, one of their credit cards, some activity was posted to your credit report. And you will likely recognize it because it will be a credit card you've never heard of, or a loan that you never got, or something else. It happens frequently, especially if your name is John Smith. I feel bad for all the John Smiths in the world because there are so many. The likelihood of having something posted to your credit report incorrectly is probably pretty high. So when that happens, the first thing you can do is call them and then submit in writing. Because they usually want you to, first of all, go to the trouble of submitting it in writing, because then they know you're serious about the complaint. And then, of course, they'll research it for you. Something else, sometimes you may negotiate with a creditor. Let's say you've missed 2 or 3 payments, and you missed enough that it went off to collection. But then you call the creditor and say, you know, this isn't my fault. you guys goofed this up a long time ago, and now you sent it on collection, so it's making me look bad when it was your problem. So you can ask them to have that removed off the credit report, the fact that it went to collection. Sometimes they'll forget. So if it's still on there, you want to go back to them and make sure it's been removed. And then at probably the ugliest you can ever face is identity theft, right? Identity theft is pretty scary. My guess is, unless you're totally off the grid, I have to guess that just about everyone has our information somewhere. Someone has our information somewhere. So between, and you should be very cautious about your social security number. Do not carry it in your wallet ever. Insurance companies ask for your social security number. Basically, that's quite often because that's how they track your account. Ask them to give you a different ID number. There are many companies that really do not need your social security number. And so feel free to ask them and say, why do you need it? I really don't want to give it out. Why do you need it? And push back. And sometimes they'll say, oh, don't worry, it's on the app, but we really don't need it. So feel free to safeguard your information as much as possible because it's your entire financial situation when you think of it. Some people still carry around pins with their cards, personal identification numbers with their debit cards, which you should never do. I'll give you an example, and this was years and years ago. Things are so much more sophisticated now, but when I used to work in the bank, I would talk with the security officers, and they would say, well, yeah, you know, at the time, and this is probably 2 or 3 decades ago, Chinese food restaurants. A lot of them would have a front. They'd scan your number and keep a copy of it. They'd send them to Hong Kong. Hong Kong would produce, with your credit card number on it, someone else's name on it, beautiful, shiny credit cards, ship them back to the US and give them to the criminals, and they can start using them on your credit. Stuff like that happens all the time.
That's crazy.
Crazy. And that was 2 or 3 decades ago. I mean, they're much more sophisticated now, but they are producing credit cards and even online, right? Where all you need is the code on the back to enter. Once they get that from you, however they do, they're going shopping. So it is so easy to duplicate a credit card. A debit card is a little harder because you need a personal identification number. But once and some of them can be so charming, right? You've heard about fraudsters who call up elderly people and say, hi, I'm the bank. I'm really concerned because this has gone wrong with your account, but I want to identify you first. Please give me your social security number, and they're off to the races, right? The nasty things people do. So the only time, and I can't imagine they even do this much anymore, the only time the bank's going to call anyone is, hi, you're really overdrawn and you're making a deposit this day, kind of thing, right? And that's usually with major business clients or clients they've known for a really long time. For most, it's like, okay, we're either going to overdraw you and charge you for it, or we're going to bounce the check and charge you for it. So it's good when you get calls to be incredibly suspicious, incredibly. We're going to talk about shopping for debt. Interesting phrase, shopping for debt. So you want a loan. What do you typically do? Let's say you, most people get car loans from their dealerships these days, so we're not going to make it a car loan. Let's say you need just a personal loan. How would you go about deciding where you get that personal loan
Some people started their own bank.
Mhm.
They have a good relationship there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the way to start.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do a little shopping around on the internet. Check some banks.
Yeah, shop around, check different banks and different rates. Yeah.
It doesn't affect your loan when you are not affiliated with them?
It doesn't affect your loan when you're,
You are not affiliated with that bank.
you know, it may not. So that's a good question. And it's a good segue into banks kind of have sales, right? Springtime, if you go into some banks, they're going to have a promotion on home equity lines of credit. Because now is the time where everybody wants to renovate their home. It's like, oh, brand new deck, right? Or, oh, I want to do huge landscaping or whatever it is. So people are out thinking, yep, time to get a home equity line of credit. So they'll be advertising because don't forget, banks want business too, right? They want your loan because they're going to make money off of you. So if you know your bank, go in and sort of ask, hey, are there any promotions coming up? I'm thinking of getting this loan. And of course they will always advertise as low as 3% or 4% or whatever it is. Now, so what's good about before you go shopping is to know your credit score. If you have an excellent credit score, you can go to the loans officer and say, as low as 3%, I have excellent credit, I want the 3%. And so you can negotiate with them. You don't always have to take the rate they give you because loan officers are people too. Loan officers have targets. They have to write X number of loans, or they may not get a bonus at the end of the year. They have to try to increase the margin, which means the higher the interest rate they charge versus the cost of money to the bank, the more money they're making for the bank. So you may go in and I'll be the loans officer and I'll say, yeah, we have a sale on and I'm happy to give you 4%.
Well, I have excellent credit, but what are there any other options for me in terms of a lower rate?
And you might want to say, if there's a poster on the wall, 3%, why can't I
Oh, mhm.
get 3%, right? So tell me why I don't qualify for 3%. And if they don't have a reason, you want to push for the 3%. So there's always negotiation because this loan officer wants to get a bonus at the end of the year. We've all heard of Wells Fargo, unfortunately, which was generally a reputable bank. Lots of bank employees have targets, right? They have to try to sell extra products to help grow the customers in their bank. And so they're human too. They have families at home. They want to keep their job. But know and understand that when you walk in to a bank or a credit union, you're taking care of you, right? You come first. So if you know what your credit score is in advance, you know if you can push them a bit more, for sure. So it helps to have good credit because it gives you confidence and leverage when you walk in the door. So I think bankrate.com is pretty good. If you're looking to ever deposit money, they'll tell you where you can get certain interest rates in different local banks. You can put in your zip code. And the same with loans, right? Who's got the better rates? Now, getting back to your point, if you have a relationship with a bank already and you've proven to them, like you may have 2 credit cards and you've paid off those credit cards consistently. So if for some reason your credit score still isn't the best, but they know you, you're probably likely to be able to negotiate a slightly better rate than you might get somewhere else. But if there's a new bank in town trying to build deposits, right, trying to build loans because they're brand new, I'd go check them out too. And then, if they give you a lower rate for the same loan, same term, go back to your bank and say, well, you know that new guy down the street? He just offered me 3.5. Why can't, you know me, why can't I have 3.5 with you? And see what they say.
And you know, sometimes like bank quotes you were mentioning where you can get a series of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a little misleading because if you go to one of the banks, you might get a lower rate if you simply have your checking or savings account relationship
Yes.
there, and that's not necessarily the rate that's being quoted on that sheet.
Yes.
So you got to do a little more homework on that too. If you really.
You're right, Charlie. You're absolutely right. And sometimes, I have my clients look at credit cards on Bankrate.com a lot. You'll see them like they're tiered, and so that they'll have the credit card and then they'll have some information, so you can kind of scroll down. But then there's also, you click on to open more information, and that quite often tells you the details. Like sometimes you have to have a minimum, or you have to keep it in there for a certain number of months or something like that. So it's always good to look at the details. When you're shopping for credit, let's talk about credit cards. What do you look at? What are the features in a credit card that you would want to look at before you decide you want one credit card versus another?
I think reward credit card is good. The reward.
What's it called?
Reward.
Oh, the rewards. Oh, thank you, Illuminati. Yes, they can be. What do you want to look at when you get into reward cards? Because there's something that's quite often higher than with other credit cards. Do you know what it is?
No, because I had it once, and then when you get a certain amount, like 1,500, you get like 100 back.
$100 back?
Yeah, or $40 back, something like that. That's why I would like to have that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So if you put $1,500 on it, and once you hit that point, you get $40 back. What's the annual fee?
Probably more than that. Yeah.
It might be. Now, if you hit $1,500 every month, and you get $40 back every month, you get $480 a year, if that's how it works, right? Every card's different. So if you only pay an annual fee of $50, then, oh, you're way ahead of the game. But if you only spend $1,500 over a year, you get $40 back, and you pay an annual fee of $50. You don't break even, but it still may be worth, if the only choices you have are cards with annual fees, your annual fee ends up being $50 minus 40, which is 10, which is not so bad. But if you can get a card for free, no annual fee, which is better. Yeah, but it just depends on who you are, right? Every card is created for somebody. They look, credit card companies, and I used to work in a bank that owned a major credit card division, and we look at consumer behaviors. So we create new cards that we think work with what consumers value, right? Now, of course, you also want to make money on that card as a credit card company. So what you're hoping is that, okay, maybe Olga here spends $1,500 a month, and so you're going to get away with $480 back, but they're hoping that maybe you, Illuminata, if you only spend $1,500 over a year, they're going to make some money off of you, which will help offset Olga here, who's making away like a bandit. So that, yeah, they look at the odds, like they look at the risk, they look at the extreme, they bet on the typical behavior with that card, and they hope they make money on it.
Also, I think important, like you find a card that works that way and what you're getting back, but you want to look also at what the underlying interest rate is if you're carrying.
Good point. Yes, so tell me about interest rates, because there's probably more than one, right?
A tremendous amount, and some cards are set up so that you have a graduated rate that will go up after 3 years. And if you
Yes.
forget that, then all of a sudden you're sitting with a card that you're carrying a balance and it's at 14% instead of last year when it was at 6%.
Yes.
So you really have to look at that. Another thing that I find for myself is I have cards that are kind of based on my lifestyle.
Mhm.
Like I have a card where I get points, and it's the card that we use all the time we're going to a restaurant, because I get double points.
Of course,
You know what I
yes.
mean? So you gotta really be honest about how you're really gonna use the card.
Yes.
And then there's one out there for you. You know, every bank has like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And not only do different cards have interest rates, and by the way, if you and I got the exact same card, the interest rate you're paying may not be the interest rate I'm paying. Goes back to your credit score, right? So there's that. So there's the interest rate on your purchases, but then, and I know nobody likes to read the fine type, right? All the other rules and regulations. When I was in the business, I used to call it mice type, because they also make it smaller than your marketing font. The size of the letters on a marketing letter are bigger and really easy to read. And then all the fine type is like teeny tiny, so you really don't want to read it, right? And it actually, banks aren't trying to be sneaky. It's just that there is so much. You have so many lawyers in a bank that make you write terms and conditions that are so darn long. When you have to print 2 million of them, you want to make the type as small as possible so that you decrease the number of pieces of paper you use in the printing. So they're not necessarily being malicious about it, but here are things you want to look for. And it depends on your lifestyle. Does anybody here take a cash advance on their credit card ever? No, you guys are good, right? Charlie's eyes almost popped out. Here's why, right? Because let's say the interest rate on your credit card is 18%. The interest rate on a cash advance is probably 24%.
Exactly, that's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, and that isn't even in small type. That's right on your statement that you get every month. They are required to tell you that. Now, if you make a payment late, so your minimum payment is due on February 5th, and you pay it February 8th, you forgot. Not only are they going to charge you interest for the full amount that you've put on that card, right? They're going to charge you extra because you paid late. Some cards are like that, so you have to check, are there late payments?
Right, it's a penalty, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, late payment penalties. Another one, if you go over your limit. So let's say your credit card limit is $2,000. That's all you're allowed to spend using your card. Only somebody loses track of what they're spending, they decide to buy a TV, the TV takes them over their limit. So the credit card company may say to you, not good, we're going to charge you because we're actually giving you more credit than we had given you before because we're letting you buy that. So if you had $2,000 and you put a $400 TV on, in theory, the amount you borrowed is now $2,400, right? Not $2,000. They only approved you for $2,000 in credit. You used it all up. And then you go and put a TV on top. And so they'll say, okay,
And you can do that? Won't you be stopped at the cashier, like when it comes up?
some people are, some people aren't.
Right.
Let's talk about loans, not just credit cards. Has anyone ever used an online lender? No? So here's something that's really tricky that you want to look for. There are some online lenders and they tend to be, and there is a place for them in the world. They tend to help people who may be in a lot of debt or may not have the greatest credit score, one or the other. So people will refinance. Depending on the company, you really want to look at the fees. I had one client. This client decided to refinance about $30,000 in credit card debt. So the interest rate was 14%, which wasn't too bad because it was lower than her credit cards, right? So sounds smart. Then I looked at the APR, which I'll get into in a second. The interest rate was 14. The APR was almost 17% for the first year. And I looked at this and thought, okay, this is really weird. It's not right. And the APR, the annual percentage rate that you're paying on your debt, includes not only interest rates, but fees. So when it went from 14, I think it was 14.95, I can't quite recall, but it jumped significantly from the interest rate to the APR, which meant there was a big fee in there. So I taught her how to look for this. For the privilege of getting a loan from them, she had to pay $1,500 to get the loan financed. And what they did was, not only did they charge her $1,500, they put it in her loan. So she owed $30,000 to pay off her credit cards, but then they put the charge in there, so her loan was $31,500. So when we talked about compound interest, right? So that $1,500 is in there for the length of her loan. She's paying interest on that fee for the length of her loan. And you know who else does that all the time? Just about everyone who gets a mortgage. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah, because here's what happens. And you have a choice to pay these things in cash. So when you get a mortgage, you have fees up front. They have to look for the title on the property to make sure it's free and clear, so that you're buying from who you think you're buying. So there's title search, there's title insurance, there's the appraisal, which may be, I don't know, $350, who knows what it is these days. I haven't been in the market for a while. And then, you know, you've got all your finance fees. So depending on the bank you go to, these fees can be anywhere from like $4,000, and it varies by state, $4,000 to $8,000 to $10,000, depending on how much your bank or your mortgage broker wants to take for themselves. So unless you pay for that by check out of an account, they're putting all that into the loan you have against your house. So imagine you just took out a mortgage for $500,000, but really your mortgage is $510,000 because all the fees, they just rolled them in there, and so for the next 30 years, whatever your interest rate is, you're paying that interest rate on that $10,000 as well as the rest of it.
And when you get that, at the closing, the the closing statement, it says how much you would pay if you stayed there for 30 years.
Yes.
And 500,000 would be 2 million or 3 million.
It's crazy.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's truly crazy. So, you know, everybody's different in terms of your own personal situation. So I would not tell you to always pay down your mortgage quickly because you may need cash for other things that are going on, right? But if you, and sometimes you don't want to pay down your mortgage quickly because if you can invest it in the market and the market is paying you 12% and your mortgage is 3%.
Right.
But at the same time, Charlie's right. When I was in the bank, and I can't even remember what year this was, a $500,000 mortgage, so someone would buy a house. By the end of the 30 years, they would have paid for that house 2.5 times over.
Mhm.
What if, of course they tell you how much you have to pay monthly, but supposing they tell you $1,500, right?
Yeah,
And what if you give them an extra $5?
That
That's
could be-
helping the interest, right?
yeah,
And
absolutely
paying
it
as
is.
much,
Absolutely,
yeah.
yeah.
Another thing that's really crafty is that when they amortize the loan, for the first half of your 30 years, when you're paying your monthly, you're mostly paying interest, not
Yes.
principal.
Yeah.
So you get to the 15th year and you still got 499,000 to still pay.
I know, isn't that
But that's why what you're saying, that if you pay more than that and you say put that against the principal, that can really help you.
Yes, yeah. Even just a few payments
Mhm.
pay off, right? But it depends. It depends on how you feel about debt, which is our discussion today. Some people prefer to be debt-free. And if you can pay your mortgage off faster, great. If you have the stomach for taking more risk and investing in the stock market, then sometimes that's more fruitful than paying down your mortgage. It depends on who you are, right? So, but just know that when you're shopping and when you're buying a loan or buying a mortgage, all of these things are rolled into it. So we're going to calculate annual percentage rate. And there are actually calculators you can get online in a lot of the major banks. I'm just going to share with you how you do it so that you kind of understand what the annual percentage rate is. So we have a loan for $16,000. So that's the basic loan you want. You want to get. That's what you need for, we're going to take Olga's bathroom.
Yeah.
The monthly payment is going to be $400. So that's what the bank tells you the monthly payment is going to be. They're going to give you the loan because you're highly trustworthy. You've got a good credit score. So they're going to let you take 5 years to pay that back. Not bad, right? What is the annual percentage rate? So, when we look at the monthly payment here, that is what you're going to pay on the loan plus the interest, right? So the interest is locked up in that. So that's monthly. There are 12 months in a year, right? 12 months in a year. How long is it? 5. And how much are we paying? $400. Have their calculator up? I know what the answer is.
I have
if
my
you wanna-
phone.
Yeah. Way to go. So, the loan is $16,000. You're paying $24,000. So the difference is interest, right? So 24,000 minus 16,000 is 8,000. Now that's 8,000 in interest. Yeah, no, you want to make a face, right? That's
Yeah,
pretty
it's a
scary.
lot of money.
So that's 8,000 over 5 years,
Yeah.
right? So then you want to figure out what it is for 1 year. So then you've got 8,000 divided by 5 years. 5 years, we're just going to go for 1 year, right? Equals, can you do that math for me? 1,600?
Mhm.
1,500, yeah.
So that's per year. And then we'll take it over here. 1,600 on the 16,000 is what? 1,600 divided by 16,000.
One, two,
Is it hard?
two.
10%?
10%, yeah.
That's your APR.
So what was the rate that they said they were going to charge you? They didn't give you.
They didn't.
They just said payment is 400 and, okay.
Yeah, and normally they would, right? So this is just kind of an exercise to guess.
Mhm.
So what are you paying on that 16,000? And that's what you're paying,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
isn't it though?
For $16,000, you're gonna pay 8,000, it's ridiculous. It's like half of your loan.
Yeah. So, and here's where you get into the discussion of how badly do you want something, right? So you can pay a lot of interest. Now, these days, loans, now, if you had a bad credit score, that you'd probably be paying 10%, right? If you have a good credit score, like I'm sure all you guys do, you might be paying, I don't know, like 4 or 5. But the idea is that even if you needed 16,000, if you saved half of it, and then you only had to take a loan out for 2 years, it's so much less. And then that extra money stays in your pocket for like the next bathroom, right?
Exactly.
So it comes down to if you need a new car and your car just broke down, you need a new car. So you have to take out a loan if you don't have the cash. But if you can save in advance, then and not need it instantly, right? Everybody needs instant gratification. It's expensive. It's really expensive. So anyway, that's kind of how you calculate it. And then what you would ask them when you're shopping for debt is, what's the interest rate and what's the APR? The APR is an industry standard. They must quote to you what the APR is, annual percentage rate. If they say the interest rate is 14 and the APR is 17, there's a huge honking fee in there, and you want to know what it is. Yeah. So now we're going to talk to debt to income ratio, and that's the last thing we're going to cover tonight. That's why I split chapter 5 up. My gosh, there's a lot. Yeah. Next week we're going to talk about paying down debt. So debt to income ratio. When lenders look at lending to you, they not only look at your credit score, because your credit score is, wow, so far, with the debt that you have, you've done a good job paying it off. But now you're in front of me, the lender, asking for more. And it might be a mortgage for the first time. Or it might just be more debt than what you have today. So in order to sort of guess what's going to happen in the future, I want to look at how much debt are you going to have to pay versus the income coming in. Because there are percentages where if your debt is a certain percentage of your income, you're already in trouble. So I was actually on the web. It's amazing how many different things they use to calculate this. It drives me crazy. And it will, sometimes some lenders want to be more conservative, but I'm going to give you a basic formula so that you have an idea. And this again is going to surprise you because of some of the things they look at. So sometimes they look at your debt to income ratio for the year. Sometimes they look at it monthly. So I'm going to do the monthly one on here, right? So there are two lines. There's how much debt do you have, and that's on the top. And it's going to be divided by income, and that gets you a percentage. So debt is a percentage of your total income. And if you had 100% debt of your income, you wouldn't be eating, right? Because all of your income would go to paying debt. So if you had 100%, it wouldn't work. So that kind of, I'm trying to help you kind of, figure out percentages. And we used to take this stuff in school, right? But some of us haven't done percentages in a long time. So here's sort of the type of thing they look like. So we're going to do the top here. They look at your credit card minimum payments. So that's the first thing they add in for monthly. So if your minimum credit card payment is $25 or $50 or $100, it's not your whole credit card bill, just what you have to pay. Then they'll add in things like car loan, plus student loans, plus, keeps on going, mortgage, plus, you'll find this interesting, alimony and child support, because they're mandated. And people don't think about that after they're divorced. So what's really tough about this is when you're married, you don't have to worry about alimony and child support because yes, you're spending money on your kids, and yes, you're supporting a whole household together. But when you leave, and if you're paying these things, now it's considered debt because you have to pay them. So your debt ratio, as soon as you divorce, boop, up it goes, just like that. So they look at all these things, and then it's gross income, which means income before taxes.
Karen?
Yes.
The mortgage, that also includes if you have the payment for taxes and insurance, I think. Meaning, like, let's say your payment is
I think so.
2,500, but if there's another
Yeah.
500 that has to be in escrow for your taxes, they put in 3,000.
I think so, yeah. I think that's a
So
good point,
that's
Charlie.
that's
Yeah.
another cost.
Do you guys follow what we're talking about there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for some people, especially when you're starting out, and then if you have the same mortgage forever, it tends to stay that way. Most people, when they pay their mortgage payment, they also pay part taxes in there. So it's included, because the mortgage company pays your property taxes for you, so you owe the mortgage company back. Some people, pay their own taxes because they can. They don't have to put it in because they've had a mortgage for so many years or whatever. So yeah, Charlie's question was, in the mortgage, is that included? And yes, because the mortgage company is paying taxes for you, so it's debt that you would owe. So when you're looking at your debt to income ratio, these are all the kinds of things you add up top and over your gross income. So here are two numbers that you want to think about. If it's less than 36% without the mortgage, you're at the top, you're pushing it. You've got enough debt, and they probably won't give you another loan. If you include your mortgage, and it's less than 43%, you're pushing it, and they aren't likely to give you another loan. Now, if you're down around 20, you're good. You're doing a good job.
Even if you have a credit score which is decent?
Even if you're decent, because what will happen is the debt to income ratio is trying to predict what's going to happen to your ability to pay in the future. Your credit score is your history up to today. So what lenders are trying to do is say, okay, Illuminata has been excellent. She's got an 840 credit score up to today. And you've been able to pay all of this perfectly. But if we put another loan in there, that's like another $400 a month, you won't be able to. That's what these ratios are saying. So no lender wants to put you, first of all, in a predicament where you can't pay your debt every month. They're just going to lose. So they're making you high risk, which will ruin your credit score, give you anxiety, because you won't be able to pay it all. Now, let's say you're somebody without a mortgage, but you want a mortgage. You're coming to a bank and you say, I want to buy a house. So they'll calculate all that to see where you are today, but then they're going to recalculate it by putting in what your mortgage payment is going to be. So then they put that in there. Oops, 2 plus signs. We only need one, right? Then, because they'll say to you, Olga, oh, congratulations, you want to get a house. You're looking pretty good. You're looking below 36%. Excellent credit score. We're so happy to have you. Let's just check that when you have a mortgage payment of $1,500, in addition to everything, that you're still below this. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, this is even high. So you're paying 43% of your gross paycheck, right? So gross income, that's not even taking taxes on, right? So this 43% after tax, like your real income that you have to spend, it's much higher than 43. So you're already like 50-ish probably, or somewhere around there. And that doesn't include utilities, food, clothing, cell phones, all the things in life we spend money on. So sometimes when people really, really, really want a house, and they say, no, I can afford it, I can afford it, but they're pushing up higher than this, it's really tough. It's really, really tough. It's better to try to pay off some small loan in there. And don't forget, you're just paying the minimum on credit card payments if you're at 43%, right? So if you're just paying the minimum on your credit card payments, you're not even paying them off every month, so they're growing. And when you get a house, they're going to grow more because you have to furnish the house. So this will get higher. So this can be really, really high. It can drag you down. So that's why they look at things like debt to income ratio, because you think you can handle it, and you're so excited about your house, or you're so excited about getting that new car. But, you know, the fun wears off when you can't keep up with your debts.
But it's good that they do that, because
It is.
you'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yes, they do. There are a number of ratios, actually, and so this is like just one of them. Yeah, and so they check on things because they want to make sure that you can, yes, they want to give you a loan. Yes, they want to make money off of you, but they also don't want to destroy your life, right?
You know, it's very nice you say that, Olga, because I was going to say in defense of bankers and everything, banks don't want to put you in a situation where you come crashing down, because the last thing they want is a house that they have to liquidate. That's not what they want. And so many times people I remember would come in and they would be offended when you couldn't give them a loan, but you're really doing the right thing for them.
Yes, yes. Yeah, there are so many people who get upset because the bank won't let them buy a house.
And they're doing them a favor.
Yes, they are.
Yes. You know, when there was a time when lenders stopped asking people for their salaries and approved them to buy homes
Yeah.
without, right?
Right.
We all remember those
I
days.
remember that, yeah.
Trusting people that they're going to be honest. Well, then some of those people lost their homes because they weren't honest. They were so anxious to get a home, and I understand. It's kind of, you know, it's sort of the American way for a lot of people, right? But if you can't afford it, it's going to, the debt is going to weigh you down every single day. You're going to wake up. You're going to know you can't afford to miss work because you need the paycheck, and you have to work overtime because you have to pay down your credit cards and all that, and it's a terrible way to live. So there are ratios like that, and you can go home and calculate your own and see where you sit, and so you have different targets here. Yeah, it just and if you're low, feel good about it. Yeah. Any questions about this? Good. Okay. We're going to close this session. Thank you again, Catherine and Greater Austin TV. Thank you so much for joining us at Women's Money, the #1 financial program. And if you want to take the rest of this course, we invite you to actually join us in person. We're hoping to start again in September or October. Thanks so much.